because this is one of the best parts of this. I think that when we first learned about you and I start digging, the first thing you see is that you played with Ozzy Osbourne, right? That you were part of the band, and I just think that's so cool because growing up, I was born in '82, so obviously my father was listening to that. That's this type of music. 82, man.
Jeez, I was born in '66.
Okay, so we out here swapping old stories, and you got a couple years on me, Jeff. That's all right.
Me and Rudy, our paths have crossed many times actually over the years.
I have bases. Way older than you guys.
Dude, he just told us he's been playing freaking in band for 60 years.
Oh,
I was
like I said,
shit.
60? No, not 60. Well, no, not in bands. I mean,
it's pretty close. Look, they don't talk that crazy shit, man, but it was close.
60, don't add some numbers.
He's played in about every band there is from the 80s.
All right, Whitesnake.
Yeah.
Quiet Riot.
I've been holding a guitar. Yeah, I've been holding a guitar since the 60s, but not necessarily. It's like you have to learn how to play the instrument. You have to learn how to play it.
Yeah. Like I said, I got to admit, and I don't do this very often. I don't mark out for too many people, but I do firmly believe you're probably one of the best bass players I've ever heard. You're definitely by far the most entertaining for me to watch.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I mean, musically, I'm a work in progress. As far as entertaining an audience, that's I've been doing it for so long that I see this is the secret to what I do.
Oh yeah.
I project myself in the audience, and I can actually watch the band, not just me, because it's a matter of covering the stage. Never leave an empty spot. Like if somebody happens to be, 20 rows and this side, everybody goes to the other side. What's the deal with that?
Yeah.
Bring somebody else over here. You know what I mean? So in certain bands, like let's say Whitesnake, where there was so much movement going on, I was playing the backfield, which meant that if I see people moving around, I go through the back behind them and I fill up the spot. And that became a natural, in Whitesnake, when we started headlining, we would videotape. This is 1988. We have videotape. No iPhones yet.
Yep.
Every night, and right after the show, we would look at the show, watch our positioning with the lights to see how we were being lit. Being lit, it's one of the first things that I learned or trained myself when I first joined Ozzy, because there was only one or two follow spots, and none of them were going to be on me. There would either be two follow spots on Ozzy, or one on Randy, and one on Ozzy. Yeah. Everything else was just lights, back lights and side lights and side fills and the front lights, the park cans. So I noticed that the lighting director will always place little crosses, like X's, on the ground on the stage. And I said, this is where I have to stand in certain songs, certain parts, because that way I will be seen.
Yep.
Because you want to be seen.
Right. Yeah. Like that. That's cool.
Like I said, I've done stage managing, and actually the last band I worked with was with Jackal, I believe. That's a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Great guys, love them to death.
Great guy, great band. Yeah.
And then I think before that it was actually with Quiet Riot. I sent you a picture of Quiet Riot and Denny McClain together at a show I did several months ago.
Yeah, that's why I recall. I recalled seeing your face. That's why you look so familiar. I thought I had seen you in Oakland. Okay.
Well,
okay, yeah.
I took that picture because they're the most complete opposite human beings ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was a entertaining weekend, that's for sure.
Awesome.
So you're doing shows now. Who else do you work with as far as like when you tour and go to places? Are there any notable people now that you're still doing music with that you got to tour with? Or
no, just Quiet Riot, and it's
so you do your own thing. You guys are just touring on your own. Because he said Wyandotte. I didn't even know that. That would have been cool to go check out. Damn it, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Yeah.
You're going all over. Are you still going out of the country and not just around here, or are we just in the States mostly?
Yeah, yeah, we got was mostly in the States, especially in the summer. That's where we get the most requests uh for to play fairs and casinos, outdoor shows, packages. We've been doing a lot of packages this year. And it's always fun because we get to hang out with our buddies from other bands,
Yeah.
people
Oh,
that
yeah. Get a jam
that
out.
we've
Right.
known for decades.
I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and since a lot of musicians have moved out of Los Angeles area, they've gone to Nashville and Las Vegas. That's the only way they can actually get together with them, on the road.
Right.
Now, have you worked much with Derek St. Helms, Nugent's old guitar player? He's
Yes,
been touring on his own. He's a very
yeah,
nice guy
Derek
as well.
is great. Yeah, he's great. Yeah, we do rock and roll fantasy camp
Yeah,
frequently, and that's where I get to hang out with him. Yeah, he's tremendous, and I I'm a big fan.
yeah,
Going back to the Technician days.
yeah. I mean, he's pretty impressive, I got to say. Now,
Mhm.
and do you guys do any of the cruises as well, or no?
We did. I've done cruises when I was with the Guess Who. I
No.
did, which is a totally different genre and age demographic.
Yeah.
We did the first one I did was the Flower Power, I believe it's called Flower Power,
I've heard of that.
which is 60s theme
Yeah.
Right.
because the Guess Who goes back to the 60s with shaking all over. And that was interesting because there were a lot of like what do you call those rascals, those little scooters, people getting around in those little scooters,
I actually
whatever
rode
they're
one of them
called.
once.
Yeah, those, and there would be gridlock at the buffet. So I knew how to, like,
That's nuts.
when it was not like rush hour traffic
Yeah.
at the buffet, and just beat everybody to it.
That's
And the second one was called Rock and Romance, and that was more 70s. We did that one too, and that would change. They went from those rascals to walkers. So they were still walking, but they had the walkers. So that was fine. And this year we did the Chris Jericho cruise.
Yeah, I know
Nice.
Chris very well.
Chris he's a dear friend, and it was just so fantastic. It was more like a Comic-Con
Yeah.
audience. Audience, people on the cruisers. There was some rock bands. His band Fozzy played. I got to jam with them. He jammed with us. It was really mellow. And this
Badass.
next year, we're booked already to play on the Monsters of Rock cruise,
That's cool.
which I'm really, really looking forward to because I mean, I'm a fan of so many of the artists on the bill.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's going to be great.
Are you guys coming back to Michigan at all this year?
Yeah, we are. We are coming back a few times. I was looking at my itinerary, and we're all over the place, all over the place. So, but there's a few more Michigan shows coming up.
I want to look at, now that we talked to you, we do a lot of stuff here in the Monroe area, which is what, we said about 20 minutes where you were in Wyandotte, 25 minutes,
About
and
30,
half hour.
yeah.
We need to definitely look into what it would take to get you down here to do a show here. in
I could
Monroe.
do that for you.
Yeah, Jeff, that's because I'm thinking the gears are turning now. If you're here all the time, and it catch you when an
Well,
opportune
you're
time when
playing-
you're coming through
You're
somewhere.
playing at my old stomping grounds, New Buffalo, Michigan, at the Silver Creek, which is a casino. It's
Mhm.
and that's actually, what is that?
Where's that at, Jeff? How far away?
It's actually quite a ways. It's about 3 hours from here, but
Okay.
I'm going over there next weekend. So
Right. Not too bad, I guess.
October 21st, you're going to be there. Oops, they're winning so many tickets. I'm trying to. So yeah. So I mean, I know you're going to be there then. I know Hagar is going to be in Battle Creek too. So
Yeah, so that.
Yeah, some of the shows are not posted yet because we're still in July, and August, September they're holding off from from actually posting that we're playing, because a lot of times we do shows with other bands on the bill, and they get priority of when is the right time to post to let people know. So
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So let's talk about a little bit of your inspiration. Obviously, you said the Beatles. Like, I want to hear like who were you really listening to? You know, coming up,
Well,
transitioning into
yeah. Well, the Beatles was more of a cultural, social,
right
sexual inspiration. You know, I if if if
mass.
on
You know, for
TV,
everybody.
if on TV I would have only seen the Beatles play, I might have not had the same reaction as when the camera panned to the girls screaming.
Right.
I say, I want that. I want that.
Yeah.
I want that. Because, I just turned 13 years old. And back in the 60s, 1964, I was considered fat. I was fat shamed every single day at school. And so I was invisible, to all the girls. So I wanted that recognition. And just like any journey, you first whatever it takes you spark that interest in getting there. And then I discovered music. Once I got into it, I said, oh, even though I had been playing instruments, but the creation of music, not just, let's say being in a high school band, and I got to play trombone because I got there too late for the cool instruments. So the only thing that was left was a pile of trombones, and I just grabbed one because I wanted to be part of something, you know. And we didn't have any. That was our social network after school, hanging out. Because in school you could not really network or talk because the teacher would say, "Shut the fuck up," But in so many words, and but once when you were at lunch time in school or after school hanging out, whatever, uh, they used to have these activities after school to keep you from going home and disturbing your parents because they were still at work. So they were not there to supervise you. So you were like, stay over at school. There would be like some cool things to do, some athletics and musical, uh, like band.
Yeah.
But it wasn't rock. There was no rock in it. There wasn't even jazz or anything. It was just marching band stuff.
Yeah.
But then again, I belong to something here. I'm a part of this marching band. They don't know what I was doing, so I would fake it because I wasn't really interested in the trombone. What the hell was
Right.
that? I mean, I like the sound of it, but for me, I can't connect with it.
No. Let me ask you this. Now, did you play any sports in school?
Interesting. Yeah, I was sought after because I was big, and there were not that many big kids by the football coach, uh, and he was very upset when I quit because I was so much bigger than the other kids, not necessarily height, but width, heavier, and I didn't really have the heart to harm people. I didn't want to do that.
No.
And it was always like, especially during football practice, it's like they had me hit my teammates really hard. And these are kids that were in the same biology class or whatever. These are friends of mine. I don't want to hurt them. So I said, no, I can't do this anymore. And he was very upset about
I can
that.
see that you're an advocate of taking care of animals and things like that as well. So I mean, it would kind of go hand in hand. You wouldn't want to hurt a human being if you don't want to hurt an animal either.
No. I mean, I respect people that train in martial arts, because I every time that I watch a documentary or read something about the purpose of that person is to reach more of a spiritual level, not necessarily to go out there and whoop ass,
Yeah.
and everyone they meet,
100%.
you know,
Well, there's much more to it now than.
but having said that, I really enjoyed growing up boxing because I saw it more of an art form, and when I go to the gym, I watch people just hit the sack, the bag, uh, and their footing it's not correct. because I did when I was a kid. Again, getting back to me being overweight, my parents, they tried very hard to fix that for me. And down the street, about a couple of blocks from where I live, there was this trainer, Cuban boxing trainer that trained Kid Gavilan, which was one of the big boxers of that era, the early 60s. So I was trained by him. But then again, it's one of those things that here's my buddy who is also my neighbor, and I gotta hit this guy. I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I just, I stopped being, training for boxing. And again, I was always picked because of my size, not the size of my body, not the size of my heart.
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, how did we get, as far as, how did the Quiet Riot thing become? How did Ozzy Osbourne become? Was it through networking? Did they reach out? Were you reaching out? How did you make that connection?
That's a really good question, and I have to go back to 1979 when Ozzy was looking for a band. He had just been kicked out of Black Sabbath, and he was putting together a band. And he winds up in LA. And there is this bass player, an old friend, Dana Strum. He's the bassist for the band Slaughter. He was a big fan of Randy. They were, and he would always try to get Randy out of Quiet Riot to bigger things. And so the opportunity came that, of Ozzy being able to introduce Randy to Ozzy. So Randy declined a bunch of times because Randy, he was really Quiet Riot was really his baby. He was there. He's the founding member. He's the guy who put together Quiet Riot, the band. Kevin came up with the name, Kevin DuBrow, when he asked a musician, a guitar player from an English band, it might have been Status Quo, what would be a cool name? And he said, Quite Right. Quite Right. And
That's funny.
And so Kevin heard quite with that accent. He thought he meant Quiet Riot. So that was the name. It went from Little Women to Quiet Riot.
Wow.
So fast forward to 1979. So Dana kept calling Randy, to go on audition for Ozzy. And we in the band, Quiet Riot, we were banging our heads against the wall trying to get a record deal, because at that time, the record companies in LA only were interested in signing new wave and punk bands, because that's what was big on the radio,
Yeah.
And so Randy's mom says, you know what? If you don't look out after this audition, you might be losing on probably, the only chance you're going to get, to play in the big time. And so he did. Randy went out and auditioned for Ozzy. And even before, as Randy was tuning and just warming up, Ozzy tells Dana, Ozzy was in the control room. They didn't even see each other. Randy was in the studio of the recording studio, the room, the recording area. And Ozzy and Dana were in the control room. So Ozzy turns to Dana and says, tell him he's got the gig. Just like that.
Nice.
And so Dana, so he leaves. Ozzy leaves, and Dana goes in Dana goes in the room where he had this little amplifier set up and he was playing the guitar. And Randy goes, so is Ozzy here? And he says, yeah, he just saw you play, and he says, you got the gig. And he says, but I was just tuning up.
That's
and
awesome.
that's how he got the gig. It's one thing about Ozzy, which is pretty incredible, because I saw him do it so many times. He had this gut instinct about things. Yeah, and people, mostly people. He would just he would know right away. if it was going to work or not. And when I say work, I mean at the level of a Black Sabbath work.
What?
You know, if he had that magic, you know.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's and then so Randy leaves in 1979, and during 1980 and early 81, they recorded the Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman records.
Yep.
Early 81. Okay, so 81, 82. So they recording in 1980. Because Randy left in November, and I think pretty much immediately after that, when Randy got to England, Bob Daisley came in, but they had issues finding the right drummer. So many drummers, big time drummers that I know that personally have told me, you know what, Ozzy called me up to join the band, but I didn't want to do it because who knew?
Right.
Yeah.
Who knew that it was going to be such a legendary lineup?
I don't know.
It's nuts, man.
So they got Lee Kerslake, kind of like a few months after they started writing. That's why on the first record there's not as many writing credits for the songs for Lee Kerslake as there were on Diary of a Madman. There were way more because of course he was already in the band.
Cool.
When you guys are going to shows now, I guess, are you looking at talent that you guys may see, or do you ever look after the younger musicians that are up and coming? I'm sure you've had a handful of questions and people maybe reach out to you, or any type of advice that you normally would give.
Yeah, I mean, keep playing. I mean, listen, yes, I did get into buying a guitar and or wanting to be in a band because I wanted to be on stage and the girls would look at me, and hopefully by then I would have lost some weight, which is part of the strategy at the time, become more appealing, and but I didn't even know there was a music industry. Who knew?
Yeah.
All I wanted to do is play music, be in a rock band, and be liked by girls. That's it. Very simple,
Not much more.
And
Right.
later on, you find out, oh, wait a minute, we have to write original material. And remember, a lot of the times in the 60s, a lot of the bands, and the Beatles broke that rule. A lot of bands did not write their own songs. Some bands did not even record their own music. Like let's say the Monkees. Yeah, they would sing on the record, but rarely would they play on it. They had studio musicians, come in and do that, which was basically the norm back in the 60s. So it wasn't until like the 70s that musicians, as a rule, had to really play at a studio level, the studio musician level. For example, you have Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. He was a studio musician before he put Led Zeppelin together. Actually, Led Zeppelin is a continuation of the Yardbirds, the last version of the band. And then John Paul Jones, the same thing. He was an arranger and studio musician. He would conduct bands in the studio. But these guys who were actually rockers, but they knew, they were very versed in music theory and composition and understood what the elements necessary to make a hit record.
What was the process of promoting it? Obviously we didn't have Apple Music, we didn't have YouTube. Like, talk about the footwork that was really put in, having to go to the studio, record it, get a demo.
Big difference today. Now.
Big difference.
Well,
yeah,
to promote. I mean, that's more. Okay, back in the day, it was, for example, in the 70s, the Randy Rhoads era of the band recorded a couple of records for Japan, only for the Sony label in Japan. And they were not available in the United States or anywhere else in the world, just Japan. That's why when our record came out in the United States, it entered eventually the Billboard charts 40 years ago, which is when the album Mental Health came out. There might have been some foreign charts, but nobody really cared about that because you would make this. All the bands wanted to tour America. That's where it was so big, so massive, so many places to play at, so many radio stations,
Right.
so many promoters, so many clubs, so many venues, theaters, and all of that. So that was the market that all the British bands, they just wanted to come in and just like they wanted to rule that market, like the Stones eventually did, and then the Beatles in the 60s and so on, Led Zeppelin, so Quiet Riot, because the Japanese versions, those Japanese recordings were never even made. It had nothing to do with Billboard. That's why some people say, well, Mental Health is your third record. Well, not really, according to US market, because it never existed in the United States. And that's what we go by, Billboard magazine. So by November of 1983, it became the first debut by a metal band to reach number one. There were many number one metal records before that. So yeah, and it's only due to the fact that 40 years ago, Billboard did not recognize any of those foreign territories.
So what was it like back then coming to Detroit? Being like we hear about Detroit Rock City, and was it as crazy as we hear about?
Well, this is what differentiated Detroit from every other city that we played at. Our agency back in the day was called DMA. They were based out of Detroit.
Okay.
And so every time that we would get a tour, and I'm talking, okay, our first tour was with the Scorpions. And the reason why we got to tour with the Scorpions on our first record was because they were getting ready for the US Festival. Remember the US Festival?
Yeah.
Yep.
1983, the US Festival. Okay. So we were not on the bill originally. So we're touring for about a couple of weeks with the Scorpions. They're getting ready for the US Festival. They had been in the studio all this time. And like I mentioned, we shared the same agency. So they stuck us in there. And on the very last show of that run for the Scorpions was in Denver. Now, the promoter in Denver, Barry Fay, was also the in charge of putting together the lineup for the US Festival. So he catches our show, opening up for the Scorpions. We finish the show. We go to our dressing room. He comes in running, and he says, "How would you guys like to play the US Festival?" And I go, "What's that?" And then he starts explaining, and we go like, "Wow, this sounds great." And it was like 2 days away from that day, right? So immediately right there, what happened was Joe Walsh was supposed to be on the metal day, and they moved Joe Walsh to the following day with David Bowie, Stevie Nicks. And so they were looking for a band, and he saw us, and we got the gig. So that's how we did it. So we did Scorpions, Oz Festival. Then immediately after that, we did ZZ Top. We did Loverboy, Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah.
And then Black Sabbath. And by Black Sabbath, we were number one. And we just kept going out the charts. It was like a slow climb, but it was steady. And by November, that's when we reached number one. And after that, we went to England, Europe, to open up for Judas Priest. And then we came back, and December 31st, New Year's Eve, 1983-84, we headlined Cobo Hall. So in every tour that we did,
That's
with
badass,
let's say Black Sabbath. I believe we played in Joe Louis with Black Sabbath. But there were many Pine Knobs that summer.
Yeah, for sure.
Loverboy was one of them, and I maybe it was Cobo Hall with Iron Maiden. I don't think it was Pine Knob,
Cobo Hall
but
used to be a
yeah,
great place to
yeah,
see those rock bands.
So that year we played Harpo's. That was the first show we did in Detroit.
Harpo's.
They played Cobo Hall, and then we played Joe Louis, and then we came back and headlined New Year's Eve, Cobo Hall again.
It's amazing you can remember all that. I can't
Yeah.
remember what I had for breakfast this morning, and you can remember 40 years ago.
That's nuts.
And
you're able to articulate it. That's another thing already. I can't.
Most of the wrestlers can remember the date that they did this. I can't remember who I worked last time,
Well, I mean, these are significant
Yeah.
milestones in my life.
Memories,
Sound like your whole life is a significant milestone.
Right. I mean,
your whole life.
Man,
I'd love to sit down with you when you come back into town.
dude's
and
getting down.
hang
He's
out
still doing it.
and,
I'm working on it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still working on it. Yeah.
Well,
My wife tells me we were talking a couple of days ago about certain things, and she says, "Yeah, I can see you. You're gonna die on stage with your bass on."
That's okay. I hate to say it.
She gets it. She gets it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we talked a little bit about your the tour, and so it's just Quiet Riot. We can expect to see you're not touring with anybody else right now.
Yeah, I'm home.
That's good.
I'm home. It's when right before Frankie Banali passed away, he asked his wife to ask me to come back to the band, and so I mean, I've had a 50 years worth of friendship with Frankie Banali. We met on my birthday, November 18th, 1972, and he passed away in 2020. So that's a couple of years, or maybe a year and a half short of our 50-year friendship, and
time.
playing together, which we did right after we met. So I did the same thing 41 years ago when I left Ozzy right after Randy Rhoads passed away. See, this is what happens. When I joined Quiet Riot in 1978, it was the first time that I was a part of a band that had a collective consciousness. I didn't know when I was touring in the Midwest playing in top 40 bands, it was just basically it was kind of like going to college. You're getting my chops up. I'm getting to learn how to work the stage, how to work the audience, how to create my identity as a musician, my sound, all those things. No school is going to teach you that. You have to go out there and do it. I mean, not even nowadays, kids have School of Rock, which is great, but I think School of Rock will prepare you for when you become a professional musician. So back then we had a huge gap, and that gap was the School of Rock was actually covered by playing teen dances and quinceañeras. They were like in Miami, where I grew up. They were like sweet 16 parties, So you were not expected to be at a pro level, more like a good garage band level, And then then after a while you start playing clubs and you become more professional and so on. So by the time I joined Quiet Riot, the only purpose musicians were moved to LA like I did was to get a record deal. That's it. Why leave home if this is not what you want to do in life? Achieve this, become a professional touring recording musician. And Quiet Riot understood that. And that was why there was a band called Quiet Riot, because we wanted to take the music to the masses and and be professional musicians. And at the core of that was Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads was the spiritual center of the band. And from Randy, who was born into a musical family. His mom and dad, music professors. They built by literally built brick by brick the school called Musonia, which is still there in North Hollywood, in the Los Angeles area. It's called Musonia, and that's Randy. Randy could read music. He studied composition
he was
and
classically
harmony.
trained too, wasn't he? Randy was classically trained, correct or no?
In classical guitar back then.
Yeah.
He joined a rock band because he wanted to hang out with
I get it.
fun and meet girls, you know. But at the core of Quiet Riot was beyond that. Quiet Riot, we never talked about politics, religion, who's going out with who. We didn't care. What we care about was we're going to get a record deal. We're going to make great music, great songs, great performances. And we had the goods. We had Randy Rhoads, who is a rock and roll Hall of Famer, you know, by himself, not even a band.
That's
You know?
the end goal.
So
that's the end goal.
yeah, I mean, you know, what a wonderful role model he was without even trying. He was just all I had to do was just watch him and I go, wow, okay, this is the way to do it, you know. So that consciousness, when I joined Ozzy, there was Randy. Now Randy's at a higher level of consciousness now. Now he's in a global playing in front of thousands with a two soon to become iconic records that he composed and performed on Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. You know, so it's a whole different level of Randy. And then he passed away. He died. And I mean, you're talking about leaving a hole not only in your soul, but in the joy of making music. It was gone. You know, so
that's
I
a real
knew
legacy.
that I had to move on. Yeah, I knew that I had to move on from Ozzy. And when I got the phone call a few months after Randy passed away to come in to record as a tribute to Randy one song for a possible record that turned out to be Metal Hell, recording the song Thunderbird, which I used to play with Kevin in his band Dubrow between the Randy Rhoads Quiet Riot era, Quiet Riot, and the Mental Health era of the band. There was no Quiet Riot. It was Dubrow. And I used to play that song with him in Dubrow, and I used to live with Kevin right up to the day that I joined Ozzy. So I went in there to pay tribute to Randy, and then there was Frankie Benelli, like I mentioned before. We had been playing up until a time, trying to get in the studio and struggling to stay in rhythm section for 10 years. And finally, I'm in the studio with Frankie recording. And then there's Kevin, who, I have this whole history with him, with Randy in Quiet Riot and in Dubrow and living with him. And that brought back the joy of making music all over again. That purpose, that collective consciousness was there again. And so, so to honor Randy, and if you look at the back of Mental Health, it's dedicated to him. Who knew it was going to be number one record? We didn't know. We just knew that we're making this record and we're dedicating this record to the memory of our bandmate,
That's
Randy
amazing,
Rhoads. So I did exactly the same thing. I left one of the, at that time, I left one of the biggest bands in the world, Ozzy Osbourne, to join the Complete Unknown, just because it was going to bring joy to my life as a musician, on stage, and be back with people that we share the same musical integrity, collective consciousness. And coming back now again home, it's the same thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm home again to that same collective consciousness.
Circle of life.
I'm playing with a great bunch of guys. Yeah, I mean, if Kevin and Frankie are not going to be here with us, I got to tell you, I'm playing with Johnny Kelly, who Frankie picked himself. He is the former drummer from Typo Negative and Danzig, world-class drummer, great human being. Jizzy Pearl with his band Love Hate, that Kevin was a fan of. And Frankie picked picked Jizzy, to join the band. And Alex Grossi, who has been in the band for over 20 years now, he was groomed and picked by Kevin to come in and be the guitar player, the third guitar player in Quiet Riot. So I got a great group of brothers, Quiet Riot brothers, to go up on stage every single night and celebrate the legacy and the memory
You guys,
of Quiet Riot.
We're gonna need a part 2 because we're running out of time, Rudy. And I want to hear these stories. You know,
Yeah,
what I mean?
was just thinking,
Everything is
there's
just.
no way we can stop this.
I
This is
just,
great.
I want to keep going, but we're running out of time back here. But again, please let the people know where they can find you, any upcoming shows, any social media that you'd like them to follow you to keep up on any updates. We appreciate it.
And we're gonna we'll do another hour here.
We
fairly
got
soon.
to do a part 2 because I really do have a lot more
we'll be
questions that I'd like to ask. Like, it's
Because I'll be able to watch this over and then
so
come
many.
back in and talk about
so much
continue
more.
on, you know.
Yeah. If anybody wants to find me, most Mondays I'm at the Costco in Woodland Hills by the almond milk display.
Well, like I
love
said, when you come back to Michigan, me and you sit down and we'll have dinner. How's that sound?
Okay, you got it.
All right,
Sounds
I'll see you
delicious.
soon, buddy.
Okay,
It's great meeting you, Rudy. Thanks so much,
Pleasure
man.
to meet you.
Bye-bye.